So we have our pack all packed up. We need to make a cover for it. So to do that, we purchased a cheap cover from Walmart. $5. And it fits over the pack. But being from Walmart, it needs a little work. So let's get to it. So for $5, you get a pack cover. It has a little string at the top with a cord lock that I actually removed, and a string at the bottom. Somewhere inside is some facsimile thereof of shock cord, so we can cinch up. All in all, for $5, it beats trying to order up sil nylon. But being from Walmart, some of the stitching you can see is already not the greatest, and it's a bit big for the circuit. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the string and the shock cord and replace it with quality shock cord. We're going to sew up this little seam here, put a piece of gauze grain over this with some holes burned in with a soldering iron, and our shock cord will come out of that. That'll give us a little bit of a stronger stronger seam at this part where the stress is going to be. Also, we may shorten this a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. That'll require a little bit of sewing, and we'll go ahead and investigate the seam all the way along here. We may need to go through and add another stitch or two in there with the sewing machine, so stick around. So I moved the strings, and this is the elastic that they used. So it wasn't even shock cord all the way around. It was just some cheap elastic. There was some side stitching that was holding this in place. I just used a seam ripper on that. So now we have a channel all the way around. We're going to put in some shock cord, and then I think I'll do a touch-up stitch all the way around just to make sure that it's secure. So after I've run the shock cord through the channel, before I do my sew along this seam here all the way around to reinforce it, I took a soldering iron and I made a small hole in there and passed the shock cord through. This is a piece of gauze grain. It's like 1.5, and I cut a section, and what I'll do is I will sew it all the way around up here. I'll include it on my strengthening stitch right here, and then I'll also use a buttonhole stitch in this hole to secure it, and basically that'll keep it from fraying in that edge. And this gauze grain will help strengthen up this nylon when I cinch it up as a pack cover, and also if I use it as a gear loft, which I hope to use it. Okay, so I'm going to sew this on here, this piece of gauze grain. You can see there's the gap here where the original string came out. I'll clear that up once I run a stitch along the perimeter here to strengthen it up. So what I need to do is I need to sew this up, and we want to be careful that we're just getting the first layer of that channel. And we're going to go into the gauze grain. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end up sewing what's known as a blanket stitch. Okay, I'm going to show you how I do that. So I go through that first layer, I go into the gauze grain, okay, and essentially I'm going to create a loop, but instead of having to go through the loop, I just bring the thread over that needle and then pull it through. Okay, and as it goes through, you see we get this little line right here. This little tag's in the way, but so we're going to do the next one. It's up over the needle, pull through, and as you pull through, you'll tighten up, and you'll start getting a line of this thread that'll move along your edge. Now the reason I like this particular stitch, and I've heard it referred to as a lock stitch, I've heard it referred to as a buttonhole stitch. It's common to use on buttonholes if you're doing reenactment stuff. Is essentially you're creating a row of tiny little half hitches. And so if for some reason the thread breaks, it has a break in the thread or an abrasion, the whole thing doesn't unravel because you've locked in each one of these stitches. So you're unlike a whip stitch, where if you have a break in the thread, that whip stitch can continue to come undone all the way down your fabric. So once again, like I said, I'm just trying to make sure that I could just get that top layer of that channel. I don't want to sew all the way through. I want that shock cord to be able to move through there. And then we're going to do that. I like to do this on edges, so I'll do this all the way around the perimeter, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, and here it is, the final stitch. I use that blanket stitch, or a lock stitch as it's sometimes called, all the way around. This part is open, but as I said, I'm going to be running a stitch along the perimeter to strengthen that up. And this hole just burned through with a soldering iron. I decided I don't really need to sew that up. I don't think it'll braid too bad, and that's just there to kind of help keep it all together and strengthen this joint. So we're just going to do the perimeter, and it should be ready to use. In a small package at 2.75 ounces. The pack cover pretty much folds it up on itself here. It's pretty small, and you can use it as a gear loft off your ridgeline of your tarp if you needed to. And just a few simple changes. Replacement of the cords. We strengthened up the ends here. Added a little bit of shock cord all the way through so it retains its stretchiness. And it actually loads onto the pack much better. And I'll show you that on the elastic has enough stretch to keep it on there. I ended up not trimming the actual pack cover. It'll fit around the sides where the cook kit is, right here, or if I have water bottles on the other side. There's also enough slack that if I have my trekking poles attached to the pack, this part is puffy enough that it should go over the trekking poles just fine. So for $5 and a little bit of work, you can improve this product from Walmart and make it fairly serviceable. And it has multiple uses. So there's just one little thing that you can do to modify gear to make it work better for you. Thanks for watching.